Picture the year 2016. You were sitting in the back of your classroom, hiding your phone under the desk, or maybe lounging on the couch on a lazy Saturday morning, scrolling endlessly through the mobile app store. At this point in time, the mobile gaming landscape is filled with clunky, battery-draining messes, endless runners that get boring after 10 minutes, or simple tap-to-jump distractions that offer zero actual depth. You are looking for something with real substance. You stumble upon something completely different, a game that fundamentally changes what you thought a mobile strategy game could be. You download Stick War Legacy. Almost overnight, it became an absolute phenomenon. It delivered high-octane, massive-scale tactical battles right on the tiny screen of your phone without ever lagging or crashing. It wasn't just another game to pass the time. It was an obsession. You spent hours upgrading your miners, meticulously commanding your armies, and systematically conquering rival nations across a sprawling map. It felt like the absolute, undisputed peak of mobile strategy, a masterpiece that everyone in your friend group was playing and talking about. The gameplay loop was flawless, the progression was incredibly satisfying, and the fanbase was fiercely loyal. Naturally, when rumors of a massive, ambitious sequel started floating around, the community hype was unimaginable. Players were more than ready for the next grand evolution of the universe they had fallen in love with. But what they eventually got was a tragic masterclass in how to completely destroy a legacy. The developers made one fundamental, game-breaking shift in their design philosophy. It was a singular, greedy decision that completely stripped away the magic of the franchise, abandoned the core player base, and left the community entirely shattered. To truly understand how one of the greatest mobile games ever created fell from grace and ruined its own reputation, we have to go back to the beginning and examine exactly what made it so incredibly special in the first place. Before the massive sequel controversy and the bitter community backlash, the original game was born from a brilliantly simple but ambitious vision. The masterminds behind the scenes, Jason Witham and Brock White, had a singular goal: to take the massive, overwhelmingly complex mechanics of hardcore PC real-time strategy games and condense them down into a perfectly streamlined, single-lane touchscreen experience. And they executed this concept flawlessly. But what truly hooked millions of players wasn't just the smooth controls or the satisfying animations. It was the surprisingly deep, engaging lore that gave every single battle incredible weight and meaning. You weren't just randomly spawning stick figures to fight other stick figures. You were the absolute ruler of the Order Empire. Your nation was a rare beacon of peace, diplomacy, and knowledge. But there was a massive problem. You were surrounded on all sides by absolute warmongering fanatics. These neighboring factions didn't just use weapons as tools. They literally worshipped them as divine entities. You had to face the Sword Rat, a brutal culture that devoted their entire existence to the blade and close quarters combat. You had to endure the Archidons, who practically breathed archery and could blot out the sun with arrows. And you had to survive the terrifying Spiritans, elite warriors who saw their impenetrable heavy armor and razor-sharp spears as sacred artifacts given to them by the gods. As the leader of the Order Empire, your core philosophy of peace made you a prime, heavily targeted mark in a brutal, war-torn world. You had absolutely zero choice but to abandon diplomacy and strike first. To ensure the survival of your people, you had to invade these weapon-worshipping zealots, crush their armies, destroy their sacred statues, and forcibly integrate their unique technology into your own military ranks. It was a dark, desperate, and gritty fight for survival disguised as a brilliantly colored mobile game. Every new territory you conquered on the map felt genuinely earned through strategy. Every new unit type you unlocked felt like a monumental, game-changing shift in military power. You weren't just tapping buttons on the screen, you were commanding a desperate, ever-evolving army against completely impossible odds. This gripping, incredibly stressful single-player experience sparked the massive golden age for the franchise that dominated the internet between 2016 and 2018. If you were watching gaming content on YouTube during that specific era, you absolutely could not escape it. Countless massive creators were building their entire channel identities around epic Stick War campaigns, showcasing ridiculous survival challenges, commanding massive, screen-filling unit swarms, and pulling off miraculous, clutch victories against overwhelming enemy forces. But the real reason players kept coming back day after day, grinding level after level, was the incredibly rewarding and intensely high skill gap. This was not a mindless auto-battler, where you just spawned units and passively watch the artificial intelligence fight it out. You could manually take direct control of any single unit on the entire battlefield. And that one mechanic changed absolutely everything about how the game was played. A skilled, attentive player could completely manipulate and break the enemy AI. You could grab a single Archidon, physically line up perfect manual headshots to maximize your damage output, and endlessly kite slow-moving enemy infantry. You could perfectly dodge their incoming attacks while slowly and methodically whittling down their health bars. If the enemy faction sent a massive, overwhelming wave of troops at your base, you didn't just put your pawn down and accept defeat. You utilized incredibly high action per minute garrison juggling. You would rapidly order your frontline units to retreat into the safety of the castle walls to defend, pop them out at the exact right millisecond to strike the enemy, and pull them back inside before they could take any fatal damage. A single, brilliantly controlled, perfectly timed unit could easily outmaneuver and eliminate an entire squad of enemies. It made you feel like an absolute tactical genius. You had to constantly balance your gold economy, protect your vulnerable miners, and time your pushes perfectly. The game constantly rewarded your fast reflexes, your precise timing, and your overarching strategy. It was a pure, unfiltered, highly responsive single-player sandbox where your personal skill directly dictated the outcome of the war. That incredible feeling of solitary mastery, of methodically conquering the entire continent of Inamorta through your own strategic brilliance and fast fingers, was the true, undeniable beating heart of the Stick War franchise. But the landscape of the mobile gaming industry was rapidly changing, and the developers desperately wanted to evolve and cash in on new trends. Whispers of a massive new project, Stick War Saga, began to spread through the community, promising to be the ultimate expansive continuation of the franchise. Hardcore players waited patiently for years, fully expecting a massive new narrative story, a vast expansion of the Inamorta map with new regions to explore, and entirely new, terrifying factions to conquer. Then, after years of agonizing anticipation, and the reality was a jarring, devastating disappointment. The crisp, clean, easily readable 2D art style that perfectly defined the original game was entirely scrapped. It was replaced by a strange 2.5D visual direction that felt incredibly clustered, messy, and visually exhausting to look at for long periods. When you had dozens of different units clashing on screen, it no longer looked like a clean, tactical map where you could easily identify threats. It was a chaotic, muddy mess of overlapping textures, flashy particle effects, and confusing, oversized UI elements that blocked your view of the action. But the frustrating graphics were just a surface level issue compared to the core problem. The true heartbreak for the community came when players finally loaded into the main menu and realized what was completely missing. After years of incredible hype and promises, players were met with an insultingly bare bones, practically non-existent campaign mode. The sweeping, epic, continent-spanning narrative of conquest that defined the entire identity of the first game was nowhere to be found. Instead of a rich, rewarding, hours-long story mode, loyal players were handed a fragmented, barely there series of disconnected levels that felt like a rushed afterthought, and as if the lack of a proper story wasn't insulting enough to the veteran players, the technical state of the launch was an absolute nightmare. The smooth, incredibly reliable, instantly responsive offline experience of the past was completely dead and buried, replaced by a stuttering, always online shell of a game that felt like it was actively fighting against you. All of these glaring issues, the visual clutter, the severe server lag, the utterly empty campaign, were actually just dark symptoms of the one massive foundational change that truly ruined the entire franchise forever. The developers made the fatal, calculated decision to completely abandon the rich single-player campaign in favor of focusing entirely on sweaty, hyper-competitive online PvP. They wanted you trapped on an endlessly grinding, live service, esports style competitive ladder. This massive shift in the game's core identity destroyed absolutely everything that made the original experience so special and beloved. They ripped out the beloved, highly replayable sandbox and replaced it with a frustrating, highly toxic online arena. The developers completely stopped caring about expanding the lore, deepening the world building, and crafting the single-player adventure. Every single ounce of their development effort, time, and money was aggressively poured into tweaking and balancing this stressful, meta-chasing online arena that the core fanbase never actually asked for in the first place. Once the game fully committed to becoming a live service PvP arena, the dark era of corporate greed truly began to suffocate the player base. The developers desperately needed to fund this highly expensive new server-based direction, and they chose to do it by aggressively squeezing the loyal player base completely dry. The once rewarding progression system mutated into a desperate, shameless cash grab. They implemented incredibly predatory chess timers, a mechanic designed purely to test your patience. They forced players to either pay real, hard-earned money or literally waited hours upon hours staring at a countdown clock just to unlock the basic rewards they had already earned through gameplay. The franchise had officially mutated from a deeply respected, skill-based tactical masterpiece into a shameless, pay-to-win mobile slot machine. Looking closely at the franchise today, in the current landscape, it is a deeply tragic, hollow shadow of its former glorious self. The modern sequel remains an exhausting, endlessly frustrating PvP grind that completely ignores what originally made the series great. The sweeping, epic campaign mode that was promised to the community so many years ago is still just being lazily trickled out in tiny, piecemeal, deeply underwhelming updates. It serves as nothing more than a minor, forgotten distraction from the heavily monetized competitive ladder. The legendary game that used to single-handedly define the entire mobile strategy genre has sadly become just another forgotten, desperate live service app endlessly chasing modern gaming trends. The franchise willingly traded its gritty, deeply strategic, highly respected single-player soul for a sanitized, sweaty, frustratingly pay-to-win multiplayer system. We will always have the amazing childhood memories of frantically commanding the Order Empire, bravely holding the front line against a towering giant statue, and methodically conquering the dark continent of Inamorta. But the true Stick War we all grew up with, the brilliant game that respected our intelligence, our time, and our actual skill, has been permanently left behind in the past. It's a sad, frustrating reality, but maybe it serves as a crucial lesson for the entire gaming industry. Sometimes, the absolute best games ever made are the ones that are allowed to end with dignity, rather than the ones that live long enough to slowly exploit and alienate the very players who love them the most. If you remember holding the line with a single Spiriton or landing that perfect Argentine shot, let me know down below. And thank you very much for watching all the way to the end. I'm Lord Miggs, and keep conquering.